Emails to Roy at RoyGreenshow.com. I'm on Twitter at The Roy Green Show. Listen back to anything you choose, whenever, and download it as well. Anything that we air at RoyGreenshow.com in the podcasts. I've been talking to Dr. Zuhdi Jasser for, I think, close to 10 years now on this program. Founder of the American Islamic Forum for Democracy, former United States Navy Lieutenant Commander, past president of the Arizona Medical Association, author of Battle for the Soul of Islam, an American Muslim patriot's fight to save his faith. Zuhdi, thank you for coming back on the show. Every time I talk to you, I appreciate it. And we have been talking for almost 10 years. Would you please take that period of time and shape some context around that as to where we were 10 years ago, where we are now, as far as the terror threat and reality is concerned, and where we may be headed?
Well, thank you, Roy, and I always enjoy more than I can say how much being on your program. And, in the last 10 years, there has been a huge transformation. We looked at the terror threat after 9/11 as simply being Al-Qaeda. Al-Qaeda's mission was basically to get America out of the Middle East. They wanted to exact punishments upon the Saudis and other Gulf states for their relationship with the West, but they really didn't see a vision of taking over governments or creating states. Then the Arab awakening happens in 2011. You have revolutions that are nascent revolutions of the populations against dictatorship. There was a opportunity there, a hope, if you will. Initially it was called the Arab Spring. We later settled on calling it the Arab Awakening because there was no spring, and there was vacuums left there. As the West left those vacuums, we did not really help any nascent movements of secularism or those who want freedom and liberty. We basically allowed those vacuums to be filled by Saudi support, Qatari support, Russian, Iranian influence, etc. And we pulled out of Iraq and Afghanistan, and ultimately we saw the Islamist resurgence in Egypt, in Tunisia, and in Syria through the rebels. The rebellion turned into an Islamist rebellion of many different factions, and it created ISIS. And now you have the most potent terror threat ever in the last 2 centuries coming from not only a terror organization that's Sunni Islamist of ISIS, but it also has land and territory in Syria and Iraq, and it's fighting a truly evil force versus Al-Qaeda was, trying to market itself as fighting the West, and it was hard to sell that. ISIS is marketing itself as fighting true evil, which it is, which is the genocidal Assad regime. So they're able to recruit thousands and thousands more than Al-Qaeda ever was.
What's the context of the attack on Nice? 84 human lives claimed with total callous indifference.
Well, the context is, you look at the Bastille Day. Bastille Day represents the French Revolution, the days of freedom. And it really is a defining moment of what those who divide the world into the land of Islam and the land of war, Dar al-Islam and Dar al-Harb in Arabic, that's the way ISIS, that's the way the militants and the jihadists see this conflict. So what they want to do is create disruption. They see non-Muslims or Muslims who are in the West as bugs, as inhuman. So they mow them over. I mean, we saw in Al-Qaeda magazines, Inspire, or even in Dabak magazine of ISIS, they recommended that if you can't get guns, the best thing is to get a large F-150 Ford truck to mow them over. So this is not a new technique. We've seen Hamas use this technique for years in Israel, vehicular terrorism through their Islamist goals. So the bottom line is it's a very soft target, but the symbolism of Bastille Day is very significant. And I think ultimately we're now learning that this guy was radicalized pretty quickly, which is not a surprise, since the bottom line is that these individuals get this virus of supremacism of radical Islam into them, and we have yet no potent counter-narrative, if you will, against the Islamist resurgence.
They're not just going to go away. ISIS isn't suddenly going to wake up one morning and say, let's do something else, let's just find some other way to live our lives. They're not going to go away unless they're forced to go away. Are you seeing anything, and I mean anything, from the political leaders in the West? And I won't call them, and I've said this earlier in the show, I'm not calling them leaders. I'm calling them political leaders. Have you seen anything from political leaders in the West to suggest to you that enough is being done to remove ISIS, remove Al-Qaeda, remove the terror threat from the daily lives of people in the West?
The closest was the French. They were probably doing most of, the most operations over Syria and targeting ISIS. And we're not even close. There's two elements. One is the military element to decimate them on the ground, and they are a bit on the retreat. But these guys, will need a ground operation with special forces to do it, and no one has the stomach for that, it seems. And secondly, you can't get rid of ISIS without also a transformation in Syria. Assad has thrived on ISIS's existence, and you can't now. We're starting to see cozying up to Russia and Assad as some type of solution in the West, which is absurd. ISIS will never go away. Al Qaeda used Syria as a base when we were in Iraq 5-10 years ago, and ISIS will continue to do the same. And third, we won't have any leadership until somebody begins to lead the narrative that this is a long war, that you can't kill all the jihadists, that the jihadists will continue to, whether it's ISIS disappearing and coming up as Jamaat Islamiyya or some other Islamist group, that whack-a-mole will continue until we have a narrative out of the opportunity of the Arab awakening that includes free movements, where secular nationalism, which was part of the Sykes-Picot Agreement, and we see Turkey, their latest change, I think, is also a transformation of the 20th century paradigm, if you will, the old paradigm coming back of coups to suppress Islamists versus a 21st century paradigm of liberty as a narrative in the long term. And unless we start putting Islam in its context of it being where Christianity was when the American and French Revolution happened, I think we're going to continue to circle the drain like we're doing.
30 seconds on the coup attempt in Turkey. You've said the handwriting was on the wall. What do you mean by that?
Well, 2 weeks ago, you saw Erdogan, who can't stand Russia, who's been with the Islamists, whether or not directly with ISIS, but at least with Jabhat al-Nusra and others. All of a sudden, he was warming up to Israel, Russia, etc. I think that's because of the pressure from the military, and he wanted to cozy up to the secularists, and then the Gulenists found that it might be their last opportunity to do a coup, and they did it. So the instability has been well known in Turkey for some time, and it's more of that regional cancer coming from Syria.
All right. Zuhdi, thank you as always for the time. Really appreciate it.
Thank you. Anytime, Roy.
Dr. Zuhdi Jasser, Battle for the Soul of Islam. An American Muslim patriot's fight for his faith. Battle for his faith is the name of his book.